Welcome, dear viewers, to InCast episode 5. Today we have Sharif Mingaliev with us. Sharif, very nice to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so without further ado, let's get right into it, Sharif.
Right.
Can you first off start by telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm 16 years old. I study at the British School of Tashkent. I'm currently the student president of the school. We have 2 of those. Basically, you lead the school, you lead the events, and I think that's where I gained a lot of my leadership skills, my public speaking skills.
All right, that's wonderful. Now, talking about public speaking, seeing as how this InCast episode is fully circumscribed around public speaking, let's get right into public speaking. So, first of all, can you tell me about your experiences with public speaking?
Yeah, so as I said, I've led a few events where I had the opportunity to give a few speeches to a crowd of around 100 people, sometimes more. I flew overseas. I flew to Turkey, Austria, where I gave public speeches. One of them was at TEDx.
That's wonderful. Now, talking about all of these experiences that you've had, both locally and abroad, what would you say were the main differences between your speeches abroad and between your speeches in Uzbekistan?
Well, abroad there's definitely a wider variety of your audience itself. There's a larger audience itself. There's bigger theaters where we were able to get more people to listen. I think the overseas audience was just generally more engaged in the whole process. However, I still enjoyed the local speeches. It was great.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, let's talk about the more nuanced part of public speaking. We all know that public speaking, you're out there, you have a microphone, you're being flamboyant and whatnot. However, there is the untold secrecy of the negative sides of public speaking. Can you tell me about the common misconceptions that people have about public speaking?
Well, definitely the anticipation, the way you get nervous, the way you get stressed is just generally uncomfortable. But what I personally like to do to avoid that, I just like to pretend that I'm excited. I'm excited to give the speech. I'm excited to be there instead of just, accepting that I'm nervous and that I'm scared, in a sense.
Wonderful. Now, what would you say about people who already have in their brains, right, in their minds, they already have a vision of how their speech has to go? Would you say this is a good thing, or would you say this is a bad thing? Because this is a common occurrence amidst many newer public speakers.
I think that definitely is a good thing, because you got the plan in your head, you got it, but all you have to do is actually practice the thing. Some people just go in there without a plan and they fail. But as long as you got the plan, all you need is practice, and you can definitely achieve great heights with the skills.
Having a vision of exactly how everything has to go in your mind, set in stone and concrete, is wonderful. However, if you're being too narrow-minded with it, then you can lose the broader vision of how your speech may go. Because, of course, not everything is perfect, right? Here we can have a part from my own speech, right, where the carpet under my feet is tangling, so it was extremely difficult.
To the Fermi paradox. Let me explain. The Fermi paradox is talking about the ever-expanding universe.
And unfortunately, these things happen, but you have to learn to adapt. What would you say about a speaker's flexibility and adaptability?
Well, that is definitely a great skill, and I think that's a skill you accumulate over time. You need practice. You need to go to different events, speak. You're going to fail, but in the end, all those failures will lead you closer to those improv skills that help you with the flexibility, adaptability in the situation itself.
Now let's talk about the positive sides of public speaking, right? We can't all be Debbie Downers here. So tell me, what are the fruits that you will open when you give a public speech?
Well, as we've discussed some of the skills, adaptability, flexibility, it's confidence. Confidence, I'd say, is a really big one there. Confidence just helps you in many other niches except for public speaking, which I think is a great thing.
Yeah, could you give an example of what exactly you're talking about? So niches.
Yeah. Well, for example, being a leader. Being a leader, you need confidence. Leading an event, for example, like I've done at my school, lead an event. I had to have a lot of confidence. I had to lead people, so obviously I had act as a role model for those people that were working with me.
So, would you say that this aforementioned public speaking and all of these other prior experiences on the stage play a significant or observable role in the university admissions?
Definitely, since it helps improve your personality, take it to a new level of confidence, and that's what universities look for. They look for a leader, they look for confidence, adaptability, flexibility, a person who can lead and just be a great addition to the community.
Wonderful answer. Now, could you elaborate about these parts that you're talking about? Confidence. So, is confidence directly connected to your experience in public speaking, or do you think, well, as many public speeches as you give, the better your confidence gets? What would you say?
I would definitely say that the more speeches you give, the more your confidence improves. And the more your confidence improves, the easier it is to give these speeches. So it kind of just helps each other.
Understood. Great. Now let's elaborate on this topic, right? So, from your own personal point of view, what would you say are the main tips and tricks for new and up and coming public speakers in Uzbekistan?
Well, I think I've already said this. What I personally like to do is I like to just pretend that I'm excited. Even though I feel nervous, I might feel scared. You know, you feel that little tingle in your heart, it's beating fast. So I just like to pretend that I'm excited in a sense.
Understood. And what would you say about tackling the fear exactly, right? It's more of a mind game. And what tactics do you use in order not to stutter on stage? Say, hello. What tactics do you implement?
Well, I've watched a lot of videos. I practiced, I learned from my mistakes, and what I've learned is you just have to go for it. At the moment when you feel that you might not want to do it or you feel a little scared, that's exactly the moment where you have to just go for it. You just have to go for it. You count 1, 2, 3, and you just do it, and it'll just feel easier on stage.
Yeah, honestly, we can actually take public speaking as an analog to free climbing solo, right? So we have these people who are climbing mountains without any equipment, which are maybe, I don't know, 500, maybe even 800 meters tall, and they don't have any equipment. Of course, they have the muscle memory. They've done this hundreds of times before doing it solo, so without any rope attachments. But still, it's a mind game, right? If your mind gives out, so does your body. And exactly the same can be said about public speaking, right? If your mind isn't in the right headspace, then you're going to start to stutter, you're going to forget your words, you're going to forget most of the things that are important to you. Okay, let's move forwards towards the next part. Now, public speaking, of course, many people love it, some people despise it because it's difficult. But what would you say would be great for people who essentially never tried public speaking before?
I think it's a good thing to just test yourself, test your confidence skills, test your speech writing skills. It's a good skill to know because at the end of the day, in the university, further than that, you're definitely going to use it. So might as well practice it now.
Of course. And what would you say would be one main tip that would help the new speakers into this sphere?
Well, I'd say just try things. Just go for everything. If you see there's a TEDx, it's open, just register. Just do everything, try to be everywhere, get as much practice as possible.
Exactly, that's great. That's a really great answer. And a shameless plug from ourselves, we're actually hosting an Nation MUN 30th of July. And be sure to register following the link that's going to be below in the description, guys. Of course, this is another way to test your own public speaking skills and show yourself in verbal disputes between other delegates. Only 100 slots for 100 delegates. So go ahead and register. All right, so back to public speaking. So we've discussed about the new speakers to this field, right? However, there are many old speakers. Now, could you tell me about these prominent public speakers in Uzbekistan, right? who have already been on the stage for many speeches. Can you tell me what makes them so great and why do they keep on popping up everywhere?
I think, as I said, they just go for everything. They have tons of practice. They've learned that they should just go for it. I love that analogy that you did before, where it's like a climber when he was about to climb the mountain. He looks up and there's a long way to go, but as he starts, it just gets easier and you just feel natural. And I think that's what they're very good at. They're good at just being natural.
Exactly. Fluidity is a very important factor of giving your speech. And now talking about a natural analogy for your own voice, what would you say are some great ways to improve giving smooth speeches, having a natural voice, a calm timbre, so on and so forth?
I'd say, for example, get your brother, get your sister, write a speech, and just tell them the speech. Or even if you don't have anyone, you just write a speech and you just say it out loud. You just practice it, you say it out loud, maybe even record yourself and watch it back, see if you stutter, see where you went wrong, where you could have improved, and I think that's a good practice.
That's actually a great tip. Have you ever had any primary experience with this? Have you ever tried doing this out?
Of course, yeah, and that's how I started. I started by just writing a speech, saying it out loud, recording myself, seeing where I went wrong, and just improving, and doing it over again.
Understood. Great. And what would you say would be the main outcomes and results of giving your speech in front of a sibling?
Well, you learn how to be natural. You learn how to be fluent. You learn how to get into that space, that headspace of giving a speech, just that confidence.
Understood. And is it difficult to keep up this fluid and natural speech?
I think over time, as you practice, you get more into it, you become natural. It's all about practice. In public speaking, I say it's all about practice. You just gotta go to many events and just practice.
Understood. Now let's move on to the very last part. Of course, we've talked about the benefits, some of the drawbacks of public speaking, but in your own experience, what would you like to say about public speaking in general, giving us a conclusionary statement?
You know, it has definitely taught me a lot of lessons. Most of all, it taught me confidence. And with confidence, I went to become the school president. It really takes confidence to go for that. Since you do public speaking, you know, you have to get the voters in, and it really took confidence, and that's what I got by public speaking.
Understood. That is amazing. Now, it was wonderful having Sharif on this episode with us of InCast episode 5. I hope the viewers back home really enjoyed this one. We had some great tips for you guys, for the new speakers coming onto the stage, or for old veterans who have been doing this for a while. Hope everybody got at least something new, something to retain, and something for tomorrow. Thank you, Sharif, and yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Any last words?
Well, practice.